Here we are, week 10 of the fantasy football season, talking waiver wire and Dez Bryant. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Welcome to week 10 of the fantasy football season. I can't believe we're through 9 weeks already. It's just absolutely flown by. It's almost Thanksgiving, people. I mean, that is just absolutely crazy to think about, but here we are. Week 10, and we're talking who the top roster ads for fantasy football are going to be this week. There's a lot of names out there, but there's also a lot of depth that we can grab that we may not have to go out there and spend a high waiver priority on or a lot of fab budget. We're also going to be talking Dez Bryant here at some point, which I know is a huge question on a lot of people's minds. So what do we say we get into this? I got a few lists, a few people from each position trying to go out there, help you get through some bye weeks. Not a whole lot of fantasy studs on bye. We do have Minnesota, Houston, Denver, and Baltimore all on a bye this week. So we got to find some pieces to plug and play here to make up for these players. Plus, there's some injuries out there to talk about. Let's get into this list. Let's talk some top pickups here for week 10. Starting off with quarterback, let's talk about Alex Smith. Oh, I get it. Don't stop yet. Don't stop after the first name. I know Alex Smith is not the same quarterback this year that he was last year with the Kansas City Chiefs. I totally understand that. However, as a streaming option, a bye week fill-in here for week 10, he is a decent pickup. He's coming off his best game of the year, over 300 yards and a touchdown. He's only thrown for multiple touchdowns 3 times so far this year, and he doesn't have that overly high ceiling. A lot of his weapons have been dealing with injuries, but we're seeing Josh Doctson, Paul Richardson, a chance that Crowder comes back. Jordan Reed's been a disappointment, but he's got some weapons finally starting to come back, and he's got a great matchup this week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are the worst team against opposing quarterbacks, giving up on average 34 points per game. They've allowed multiple touchdown passes by opposing quarterbacks every single week this year, with the exception of week 2, which was with a Nick Foles-led Philadelphia Eagles team. This team gives up a lot of points, on average giving up over 30 points a game almost the last 4 weeks. This is definitely a defense you can throw on. If you're looking for a streaming option, Alex Smith, only owned right now in 43% of leagues, should be available out there for a lot of you guys to pick up if you're looking for a bye week fill-in or a solid streaming option. Next up is going to be Baker Mayfield of the Cleveland Browns. Now, I understand that a lot of you guys don't like Baker Mayfield. I'm a Baker Mayfield fan. I enjoy watching him play the game, and he's been somewhat consistent as far as a fantasy quarterback goes. Yes, he's thrown a lot of interceptions, had some turnovers, but he's averaging right around 20 points per game. He has multiple touchdown passes, 3 straight weeks. That's 6 touchdowns in the past 3 weeks to only 2 interceptions. Coming off a game against the Kansas City Chiefs where he threw for 297 yards. And let's be realistic. It's the Browns. They're going to be trailing a lot, and they're going to be throwing a lot. They have a lot of weapons to throw it to with Jarvis Landry, Antonio Callaway. You got David Njoku. There's plenty of options out there to throw it to, and he's got a great matchup. Right now, he's going up against the 30th ranked defense against opposing quarterbacks in the Atlanta Falcons. Last week, the Redskins, yes, we just talked about Alex Smith. He threw for 306 yards against this team last week, and they've given up over 300 yards passing the last 3 straight games they've played. You can throw on the Atlanta Falcons. Baker Mayfield is a decent streaming option this week if you're looking for somebody to get you by for a week. Great matchup, solid-ish performance the past few weeks. There's worse options out there than Baker Mayfield. Third quarterback I'm going to talk about is going to be Nick Mullens of the San Francisco 49ers. And yes, I sat here last week and said, don't pick up or start Nick Mullens. I mean, he was named the starter hours before the game. It wasn't worth the risk, in my opinion, at the time. He came out, he played great, not taking anything away from him. A lot of people think he's like the GOAT now. But he was going up against the Oakland Raiders, and they really don't seem to give a crap in Oakland anymore. And that, I have a feeling led to some of his success. Not taking anything away from him. The guy had a great game. He looked great under center, made great decisions, no turnovers, 262 yards and 3 touchdowns. It's going to be a little bit tougher this week, though. They're going to be at home, which is a plus, but now they get to have the New York Giants come to town, who are the 13th ranked defense against opposing quarterbacks, giving up on average 20 points per game. Haven't allowed multiple touchdown passes for the last 2 weeks that they've played. This is a solid secondary in New York. This is going to be a lot bigger test for Nick Mullens than it was last week against the Raiders. If you're looking for a streaming option, though, he does have some weapons. He made Pierre Garçon viable. Marquise Goodwin was involved. You still have George Kittle there. They seemed energized on offense a lot more than they were with C.J. Beathard under center. He's a decent option. Am I going to rush out there and make him a top waiver wire ad? No. There's a lot better options out there, but if you're looking for a streaming option, a bye week replacement, and maybe you're in deeper leagues because the guy's only owned in 3% of them, there's a chance you can grab him, start him, and cross your fingers that he can reproduce what he did last week because it was pretty amazing. Moving on to running backs now. First guy we're talking about, the Duke Johnson of the Cleveland Browns, and I've been talking about this guy for weeks. And I've received some hate the past few weeks because he really hasn't produced much. But what we saw last week from Duke Johnson, his 1 carry for 8 yards, 9 receptions for 78 and 2 touchdowns, is what I've been expecting from Duke Johnson for a few weeks now. They just weren't giving him the opportunity. This new coaching staff, the new offensive coordinator, made it a point to get Duke Johnson involved, and this was the outcome. 29 fantasy points in PPR leagues, and it's kind of where I expect him to be from a usage standpoint going forward. I love Duke Johnson. He's just never had the opportunity. Hugh Jackson just didn't give him the ball enough. Yes, they included him in the passing game a lot last year, which was great for fantasy owners, but this year, he'd pretty much abandoned him. Yes, they had Antonio Callaway and Josh Gordon to start the year, and Jarvis Landry, David Njoku didn't really have a spot for Duke Johnson. Well, now that Josh Gordon is gone, they can't get Antonio Callaway consistently producing. Duke Johnson is going to be somebody who sees a lot of volume going forward. He's somebody you can pick up now and actually start as a flex play if needed for some of these bye-week fill-ins. The problem? He's owned in 48% of leagues. So he's dangerously close to that 50% cutoff, but if he's out there, pick him up. He's got another great matchup this week going against the Atlanta Falcons, going to be at home in Cleveland. They give up on average 29 points to opposing running backs. It's a decent start, and because he's getting the volume, he's one of the most efficient running backs in the NFL. You can't really call him a running back. He's more of a wide receiver at a running back position. He's not going to get the carries from the backfield, but he's going to get the looks in the passing game. Baker's already shown that he's going to look for him. Decent matchup, great pickup. If he's available in your league, he's definitely worth one of your top waiver ads. Now, am I going to say he's the number 1 waiver ad? I don't know if I'd waste a number 1 on him. Anything outside the top 3, maybe? Yes, especially if you're in desperate need of a running back. He's a great pickup. Definitely somebody who I'm looking to add in every league that I can this week. Next up is going to be somebody who I'm not overly excited about, but I do think he's worth an ad this week, especially if you're looking for running back help. I'm talking about Mike Davis of the Seattle Seahawks, currently only owned in 25% of leagues. So he's wildly available out there, and he's going to get some volume. I mean, the hip injury to Chris Carson flared back up this past week. There's a chance that he doesn't practice all week long. That could lead to added work for Mike Davis this weekend. Now, they're going to be on the road going up against the Los Angeles Rams, who are the 12th ranked defense against opposing running backs, giving up on average 21 points per game. They have allowed 2 touchdowns in each game the past 2 games. So this is definitely a team you can run on. It's not like they're impenetrable and there's nothing you can do against the Rams. You can put up points and put up yardage against them. And if he can get the volume, he can definitely produce something with it. Chris Carson was eating into the value of Mike Davis because Chris Carson was getting almost 20 touches a game. If you take away those 20 touches and give the bulk of that to Mike Davis, yes, Rashad Penny will see an uptick if Carson doesn't play. Mike Davis has been the solid producer. He had 7 receptions last week. And in PPR leagues, that's totally, gold for you. He went out there and got 7 points just for catching the ball, much less the yardage that he got after it. If he can get you close to 20 carries a game, and Chris Carson does sit out this week, Mike Davis is a decent flex option if you're looking for somebody to replace somebody. Maybe you had Latavius Murray, Dalvin Cook. Maybe you're starting Lamar Miller or Phillip Lindsay. This is somebody who you can grab off the waiver wire, start for a week. You never know. He could have some decent production for you and just help get you through. He's not somebody that I see as a must-add that I'm looking forward to starting rest of season. This is more of a streaming option, bye-week fill-in here for Week 10. Next one up is going to be Elijah McGuire of the New York Jets, and he played his first game of the season this past week against the Miami Dolphins. Had a pretty decent game, 7 carries, 30 yards, 3 receptions for 37, 9 fantasy points in PPR leagues. He's a decent stash at this point. This kid has been very productive in the opportunities he's gotten. He just hasn't been able to play yet. He hasn't been able to get healthy. They're going to slowly work him in. They're not all of a sudden going to give him, 20 touches in a week. Isaiah Crowell is still going to see the bulk of this work, but Elijah McGuire going forward is somebody who has value in PPR leagues, more of these deeper leagues, the 12 to 14 teams. He's going to have a lot more value to. Just don't forget about him. If you're desperate for a running back, maybe you went heavy wide receiver in the draft and you've just been playing waiver wire week to week to week. Elijah McGuire is somebody who has value going forward. It's a decent matchup that he has this week going up against the Buffalo Bills. They've been on average giving up 25 points to opposing running backs. They've given up touchdowns 3 straight weeks. But Elijah McGuire is not somebody you can just grab off and automatically throw him in your starting lineup and really feel good about it. He's somebody you can pick up, stash on your bench. He could provide good depth if you have an injury later on in the season. He does have that upside. The kid is very talented. A lot of people don't know a whole lot about Elijah McGuire because of this injury he had early in the year, but he's definitely worth a stash if you have a bench spot open. Don't drop anybody of high value to grab him, but he is somebody to pay attention to here week 10 on the waiver wire. All right, moving on to wide receiver. My top pickup this week for week 10 is going to be MVS. Yes, the guy whose name you could win a game of Scrabble with, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, is going to be my top pickup for the wide receiver position here in week 10. He's only owned in 38% of leagues right now. He's somebody who's widely available, but his name is out there. A lot of people know about him, and now they know that Geronimo Allison is going to miss the rest of the fantasy season, having to have core muscle surgery. MVS is about to be the number 2 option in an Aaron Rodgers-led offense. That in itself has a lot of value, and he's already produced. He's had 4 straight weeks in double-digit points and has touchdowns 2 out of the last 4 weeks. Last week against the Patriots, only 3 catches, but 101 yards. The guy has that big play ability, and he's starting to build the chemistry and gain the trust of Aaron Rodgers, which comes with huge, huge upside. I definitely like Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and if he's available in your league and you need a wide receiver, maybe you don't need a wide receiver and you just have somebody on your bench that sucks, go pick up MVS. The guy has a great, great opportunity here second half of the season and could really provide some great depth for you, second half here. All right, next up is going to be Quincy Enunwa of the New York Jets. A lot of people dropped him this year once he had that injury after week 4. But don't forget, the first 4 weeks of the season, he was averaging almost 14 points a game in PPR leagues, and he was the top option for Sam Darnold. Now, yes, he came back last week, kind of got eased into action, caught 3 of his 4 targets for 40 yards, 7 fantasy points. But this is going to be somebody going forward who gets more and more work. He was a hot name to start the season. A lot of people dropped him because they didn't have the bench space to hold him for the 5 weeks that he was out. And now that he's coming back, he's definitely somebody that needs to be re-added. He's great bench depth. He's not going to be somebody that you pick up and you start right away, unless maybe you had a few guys on bye. Maybe you have the Demaryius Thomases, the DeAndre Hopkins, the Thielen, the Diggs. I mean, there's a lot of wide receivers on bye week this week. There are worse options out there than Quincy Enunwa. He's proven to produce before. Yes, Sam Darnold has been inconsistent as of late, but this could be his top target second half of the season, and he's definitely worth an add. Don't forget about Quincy Enunwa. All right, third guy we're going to talk about is going to be Adam Humphries of the Tampa Bay Bucks. And I was super excited last week, right? Once Fitzmagic went back under center, I really liked the potential for the Godwins, the Djaxes, the Evans to take a bump in production. Well, apparently it's Adam Humphries getting that huge bump because last week he outscored the other 3 receivers by himself. Adam Humphries with 8 catches, 82 yards, and 2 touchdowns, 28 fantasy points to the total of 14 fantasy points for the other 3 wide receivers. Now, is this the normal for Adam Humphries? Probably not. This is extreme ceiling. However, over the past 2 games, he does have 15 receptions, averaging right around 80 yards per game. And like I said, he did have 2 touchdowns last week, which were his first of the season. He's somebody with some PPR upside going forward. If you're in a deeper league, he's only owned in 2% of leagues right now, so he's wildly available to anybody and their mother who wants him. And if you need a wide receiver in a PPR league, he is a very decent option. Has a decent matchup this week going up against the Washington Redskins. He's not their number 1, right? He's not going to be matched up on the outsides with, the dirty player like Josh Norman. He's going to get the majority of his work out of the slot. He's a fast, quick receiver, doesn't need the deep play. He can make things happen with the short to intermediate routes. Great pickup, solid pickup. If you're looking for a wide receiver, Adam Humphries is a very, very solid pickup here for Week 10. All right, talking tight ends. First one we're going to talk about, Jack Doyle of the Indianapolis Colts. A lot of people forgot about Jack Doyle once again because he was on bye week last week. He's only owned in 40% of leagues right now, and tight end has got to be the thinnest position ever. More than likely, most teams out there need a tight end, and Jack Doyle is available in 60% of leagues right now. Yes, he's coming off the bye week, but the week before the bye, 6 catches, 70 yards, and a touchdown. Now, is he going to be the sole, beneficiary of an Andrew Luck-led offense? No, he's not. Eric Ebron is still going to be there. He's still going to eat into the production of Jack Doyle, but Doyle is going to be one of the top targets for Andrew Luck. Now, is that going to produce touchdowns every week? That's where he's going to get the most value. If he doesn't score the touchdown, he's going to be a middle-of-the-road tight end. The good part about that is most tight ends are just middle-of-the-road tight ends, so you really have nothing to lose but upside. Grab Jack Doyle if you need a tight end. He's available out there. He has that potential to go out there and see double-digit targets on a weekly basis. Not too many tight ends you can say that about. He's definitely a great pickup here for Week 10. And if you can grab him, you can name your team the Jack Doyles if you want to. Second tight end I'm going to talk about is going to be Chris Herndon of the New York Jets. Somebody who I've talked about for a couple weeks now, but he's still only owned in 14% of leagues. He's had double-digit fantasy points 3 out of the last 4 weeks. He's had touchdowns in 3 out of the last 4 weeks. He's turned into the red zone target for Sam Darnold. The problem is we need to get Sam Darnold in the red zone more. This kid has high upside. And if you have somebody on a bye, maybe you're looking for a little bit of bench depth at tight end. Maybe you're stacked everywhere else and you just want to solidify that tight end position in case your stud gets hurt. He's a solid backup. He's a solid option going forward. And he's only owned in 14% of leagues. If you're looking for something like that, Chris Herndon is definitely a good pickup here for Week 10. All right, so those are all my top pickups here for Week 10. So now let's talk about Dez Bryant because he's somebody who's going to be discussed a lot this week. Yes, he's going to be trying out for the New Orleans Saints. And a lot of people are super pumped and rushing out there to grab Dez Bryant. Here's my take. I'm really not that interested in Dez Bryant. If I have solid wide receivers, say I have 3 solid wide receivers on my roster already, then I would pick him up maybe as a stash. But am I picking him up in hopes to start him right away? Absolutely not. I don't care what team he goes to, what they say his role is going to be, whatever you hear in the media. I am not going to pick up Dez Bryant and have any expectations to start him. This is like for the teams who are, 9-0, 8-1, 7-2, you have a stacked roster and you want to just throw somebody at the end of it just as a flyer, just as a lottery ticket, then maybe you can think about it. But if you're picking him up because you're struggling at wide receiver and you're hoping to get yourself a wide receiver 1, right now in Week 10, hoping that he signs with the Saints, I'm not buying it. No matter where he goes, he's going to have to learn the system. He's going to have to gain the chemistry with the opposing quarterback, and especially in New Orleans. That's one of the most complicated offenses in all of football. He's not going to walk in there, automatically master that offense, and be a wide receiver 1. He wasn't even a wide receiver 1 last year with Dallas. This guy could have been playing all year long had he accepted the fact that he's just a wide receiver 2 now. He's not the same Dez Bryant from, 8 years ago. It's a different type of game. He's a different type of receiver. I'm not saying he's not talented or has no skill. I'm just not rushing out there, wasting a lot of my fab budget or an early waiver claim to grab him. He's somebody that if you do grab, plan on sitting him on your bench for weeks. Not this week, but for weeks. Do not plan on starting him. Do not be excited about having a top wide receiver because until he starts producing at a solid level for multiple weeks, he's not even sniffing my fantasy lineup. I'm not even going to go out there and grab him in leagues that I need a wide receiver. It's not worth it. There's too many weeks that are going to go by where I can try to go out there and find some other depth. I would rather have MVS, Adam Humphries, Quincy Enunwa, all of those guys over Dez Bryant, only because I know I have value from them for the next few weeks. I'm not going to get my return on investment for Dez for weeks to come, if ever. I'm not that excited about him. Like I said, if you go out there and grab him, that's your choice. But I'm just saying I'm tempering expectations. I'm not expecting him to be overly productive for multiple weeks. And that's my take on Dez Bryant. I probably just burst a lot of bubbles, but just being real with you, I'm not on that bandwagon as of right now, but I greatly appreciate your support. Really enjoy doing these shows with you guys. Hopefully these waiver claims help you out here the entire week for Week 10. These are not all guys you need to go out and put a bunch of fab money on or early waiver claims on. You should be able to pick up the majority of these guys, maybe with the exceptions of Duke Johnson and MVS, throughout the week. See how it goes. See how practice goes. See what the injury report comes out with. Some of these guys could be some solid options for your team. But I look forward to talking to you later. Make sure you're checking out all the start-sit videos. And the end of the week live stream has been a huge hit. We're going to be doing it again this week. Trying to either do Saturday afternoon is my plan for right now. Saturday afternoon, right around 3 p.m. or so is when I'm trying to get the live stream scheduled for. Make sure you stay tuned for that. Look forward to talking to you guys. Really appreciate the support. We'll talk to you later. Have a good one.